I have really been looking forward to this discussion for I think a few months now that we booked this. And Janik, who you're going to meet in a moment, is in Belgium, and he represents a unique way of building community and a platform that I thought would be a really good idea for us to explore here, because when we talk about a lot of what we talk about on a lot of our discussions are is really centered around building community and building a culture of supportive community to help us and to enable us to help others. And there's nothing better than to see what people are doing in other places, and perhaps it can be expanded here to the United States, or we can borrow some of these interesting approaches that Janik and his team have pioneered in Europe. So without further ado, let me welcome Janik Sheerlink to the stage. Did I get it right, Janik?
Sheerlink, yes.
Sheerlink, okay.
Very Dutch. It's very Dutch.
And now you're going to probably tell me that I haven't been pronouncing Janik correctly as well.
No, it's Yannick, but
Yannick, see,
okay,
I knew it. Yannick Sheerling. Oh, geez, I was worried about your last name, and here you are, making me realize that I wasn't pronouncing your first name correctly. Well, Yannick, we are going to dive into Hoppler, which is the platform that you have founded. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to creating this unique platform.
Yeah, sure. So I always have been an entrepreneurial spirit, actually, but also one that is actually always been interested in society. So talking with friends about society, about the challenges of society. So me as a person with a technical background, let's say, I studied applied engineering and ICT. Yeah, wanted to do something with that. So it first started, okay, look at what is going on in the world. And then we saw back in the day, I mean, 2010, platforms like Facebook rising up, Twitter's, the Google and engines and so on. So we saw a lot of globalism, a lot of focus on individualism also, because they focus on your profile, on the individual, and on your data to create content that you like and where you want to come back for. And as you also look at trends that people tend to get more lonely over the last 10, 20, 30 years because we're more isolated and so on. We lose connections with people in our environment, with our municipality, with the local government, with local stakeholders. Then I thought it was time to build a counter movement with Hoppler. So we started our company back in 2013 to 2014, after a few years of getting the idea right, let's say. And we started out with a neighborhood network to actually connect people again locally. And I think you're quite familiar with that in America and US with like a platform like Nextdoor.
Nextdoor, yeah, okay.
Nextdoor, exactly. Or even Facebook groups could be used to that end,
okay.
WhatsApp groups and so on. But the big difference with what we do is that we don't use it for commercial purposes. So we don't sell it to advertisers. We are completely ad free. And of course, it was a challenge in the beginning because it was, for me, philosophical and ethical to keep it free of advertisement and to create real community building and trust to the citizens. Is how we would ever earn money with that, of course. So we started after 3-4 years of having no business revenue model at all. started to get partnerships with local governments. And that's a bit the whole story flow, from a technical background, interested in society, starting with something positive, with a positive impact, and then engineering a sustainable business model behind it.
Wow. And so I guess the secret sauce is that when you go into a neighborhood, that you establish a partnership with government agencies versus a platform like Nextdoor and Facebook, which is available everywhere, and there's no organization that is monitoring or driving it, and therefore the goal with those platforms is get the numbers, get the users, and then serve them advertising.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we wanted to focus on utility more than just entertainment, and that means that on a platform like Hoppler, municipalities can actually add their services on top, like care and so on. Yeah.
So now, and I think that we connected on LinkedIn because of a post that you did or something that you said that was related to older adults and building community. But Hoppler, oh, and before I go, Hoppler, does that mean something in, what does that mean? Does that have a meaning to it?
No, it's not an acronym. So it comes from the English word city hopping, because in the beginning, our platform was there to build interest in neighborhoods, and you could actually see per neighborhood what is going on there.
Okay.
The local events and so on. So you could hop from neighborhood to neighborhood, and we called it Hoppler.
Okay.
And it stayed that way. But now, of course, they're in close neighborhoods, focus on local impact, of course.
Okay, great. Okay, so when you talk about enclosed neighborhoods, so that let's kind of, and feel free if you've got any graphics or you want to share anything on your website, you can do that. But just to kind of understand this, there's an enclosed neighborhood. Let's say that let's say like I live in Reston, Virginia, which is a town that covers about 17 square miles. Would that be too large, or would that be, we have a community association. We don't have, it's like a government, but it's called Reston Association. So would some of your government clients be as large as that, or what are the sizes of those?
Well, it depends. We always express it in household, the number of households. So it goes from 200, 300, 400 households until 4,000 households. We actually, by experience, we saw the last 7 years actually that we need to go back on how neighborhoods started, and most of them started with like a small church, or a small community with a small grocery shop, or a supermarket, or a bakery, and so on. So it's a living organism, is an ecosystem where people meet each other. And before there was a lot of traveling going on, people also even married people from the same village, and so on. So you actually need to look how people orient them, to which center do they orient, and then you have your neighborhood.
Okay.
And that can be small, that can be big, but you cannot chop up a city center in two and then expect that the neighbors who live across each other are in a different neighborhood. So we always do it very organically, and could be small and big. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Reston has about 70,000 residents, and we have Nextdoor, which is self-selecting. So like if people wanted to draw an arbitrary line around a neighborhood, they could. But I'm assuming that since you're doing this in conjunction with a government, that there may be some assistance in sort of figuring out how to do that.
Of course, and we can always adapt along the way. We can always merge or split neighborhoods. We take the advice from the municipality. We have our own experience, And we also sometimes just include involve the citizens themselves. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I knew this was going to happen. We've already got a request for a demo. I dropped your website address into the chat there, but but if you want to kind of take the reins and maybe give us a little sample of what it looks like to be a part of one of these Hoppler communities, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. I can certainly show you some things. I will try to set up an environment. You want a demonstration of the platform itself?
Sure. I think that'll probably trigger some questions, and then yeah.
Yeah, because of course, I'm just logging in here for a moment.
Well, you can also just share it on, if you've got a slide deck or something, as opposed to connecting directly. It's up to you.
Yeah, sure. I will share my screen and show you some stuff.
And then obviously, you know, a lot of the topics that we talk about here are related to supporting older adults. So any types of examples that you might share with us, that would be cool as well.
Yeah, so you can see my screen now, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, first of all, as I already explained, it's quite familiar with a Nextdoor or a Facebook platform. The thing that differs the most is actually the services on top, which I will also go into more detail while I'm explaining the platform.
Okay.
And we have a professional website, which you did not yet link, which called services.hoppler.com, which is especially built for municipalities. And here you can actually find our 3 solutions, where one of them is the neighborhood app, which I will show you a small demonstration for. But we also have something to support the elderly, the digital illiterate, immigrants, to connect with the neighborhood, which we call the neighborhood concierge. And of course, we have an offering for citizen engagement and involvement in policy making. So I will explain the 3 blocks while I'm going. Starting with the most simplest view is just a central feed. And well, we already compared it to Nextdoor, but what we do differently also is that we don't include the neighborhoods that are around your own neighborhood. So you can actually only see what is happening inside your neighborhood and not do the nearby neighborhoods. Yes. So of course you can set it in Nextdoor also that way, but they try to expand it, which makes it less connective with where you actually live. 2 things are very important for the elderly also in this platform. We chose for a chronological order. So we never switch the posts in alternate time. So you can always see how far you were with looking at the platform. So that's a very important one. It's always the last message on top. This is, by the way, my neighborhood in Ghent in Belgium.
Okay.
Secondly, what's also very important to notice is that we serve everyone in the community the same feed, which is also a conscious choice, and make sure that there is like a shared identity. And if people meet each other in the bakery or in or at the school gate, whatever, then they tell about Hoppler and did you saw the message from our neighbor yesterday and this and that, and you know that everyone in the community got that message. Yeah, so that's a very important thing. Secondly, what we also did is, of course, you see here people becoming members, so they introduce themselves, they have questions, they deliver packages and so on. But every 10 posts, you can also put activities in the calendar, by the way, 10th of June, there's an activity. Every 10 posts, you actually see messages from the city or the municipality we work together with. In this case, 26th of May, it's Day of the Neighbors in Europe. So that means you can actually get a postal card for free to hang in front of your window and welcome neighbors in the neighborhood and so on.
Huh, so that's an interesting. Is this a long-standing holiday?
Yeah. It's already for decennia that we celebrate on 26th of May, the Day of the Neighbors.
Man,
And we
I
actually
love that.
tomorrow,
Well, we've got something that we need to start doing here in the States is Day of the Neighbors. What a great
absolutely,
holiday or celebration, I guess.
absolutely. It's certainly worth it. And tomorrow we go out with a big press campaign because we launched a competition in the 4 biggest cities of Belgium where people can apply their personal projects and get funded. We do this together with an organization, also with a very local core values, and we will subsidize and fund 5 projects in 5 big cities.
Okay.
So we have always something interesting on our hands here.
Yeah, that's great. Yannick, Lynn has a question, and I think I know the answer to this, which is one of the main reasons why I invited you on. And I'm not doing this to derail this demo, but is there any in-person component? Meaning, is Hoppler totally a digital platform, but is there a way to interact with real live people with this component?
Yes, that's what the neighborhood concierge stands for. It's actually a trusted physical in-person concierge who is available physically in a house from the municipality or somewhere, a community center, whatever, and also by phone, because there's a lot of people who are not able to use digital platforms.
Yeah. So now, is this person a volunteer, or are they hired, or do they work for Hoppler? How does that work?
We have different models. In most cases, it's someone who works for the municipality, social work, community officers, and so on, who already detect vulnerabilities and help requests. But instead of solving them themselves, they actually use our matching platform and the neighborhood to connect people and to let the issue and problems be solved by neighbors, more throughput, more sustainable, less pressure on the healthcare system, and it makes sure for extra connections against loneliness.
Yeah, and I think that those of us in the States that may have used a platform like Nextdoor or Facebook, that one of the challenges is that if there's something unusual on those platforms, or if you have a question, oftentimes it's very difficult to get in touch with the person that posted it. I guess having somebody who is using this platform and is a responsible human party can help with that as well.
Yeah, and also help with building trust. So it's very important for some people. You need to look at the generations, right? And there are generations, who don't know about all this social media and digital platforms, but they are human centric, and they like trust in a human and not in an algorithm. Mm-hmm. So it's very important for them that they can share their concerns, their question with a real person, and this person, this concierge, will represent the vulnerable citizen on the neighborhood network, and will find a solution in a very handy and efficient way. Yes.
Great. Now, and it sounds like too that you brought up that sometimes these neighborhood concierges are social workers that might work for the government organization that you have partnered with. Mm-hmm. But I imagine that this platform can make it easier for them to do their job otherwise, because everything is here in one digital platform, and they can communicate with people that don't have access to it because they're not using a digital platform. But it makes it a lot easier to communicate with a neighborhood for those people that do have access to it.
Exactly. I have a nice slide for that to share, actually, because the network itself actually already solves more than 50% of all the questions asked. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, of course, there's always a bunch of questions unsolved, which then can be picked up by the concierge and can be looked at to find a help person. So before I will go back to my demo, you will see here the neighbors list. And from those 363 neighbors, which are living in my small village here of around 1,200 people. So that's like 27% of all the people are on this
okay. So and there was a question that came in from Deborah. How do you compile the actual households of each neighborhood? Where do you get the names and addresses?
Yeah, so we have all the data from the cities. That's of course the advantage to work together with cities. That means that we know how the neighborhoods are identified, how many households are subscribed, but it's all anonymous because here in Europe we're quite focused on the data protection and privacy rights, right? So what we do is actually we do an unaddressed letter. We put it in every household, a physical mail, which shows the meaning of the platform, explains a bit what is the purpose of it, and to give you instructions to subscribe. And then around, on average, 32% subscribes.
Okay.
Right? 1 out of 3. So that are the people who are engaged with the neighborhood. Then you have 1/3 of people who are less digital, maybe have other problems like social problems, physical, so they cannot subscribe, right? And then you have the people who don't want to subscribe. Yeah, so there's like 3 audiences, let's say, and from those neighbors, people can actually add on their profile if they want to take care of other neighbors. So actually people can fill in their profile how they can help their neighbors, and there's more than 100 skills available to choose from, like babysitting, picking up medication, dog sitting, pet sitting, conversations, prepare meals, and so on. And this database of all neighborhood helpers is actually accessible by the municipality. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Okay. All right. So I love that slide that you were just sharing.
Yeah, wait, yeah, I will go back to that. So,
okay.
So you need to look at this is some theory. This is because we also have scientists on board who look at and who also studied this matter. And today there's a lot of communities, let's say, and people connect with like-minded people through Facebook, for instance, or other platform, or like through a sports association, because you like soccer, all people who like soccer are connected. So that's called bonding social capital, right? It's a homogenic group of people who have almost the same network, the same interests, same skills and abilities. Now, what makes a community really thriving and interesting is when you unlock the bridging social capital. So if you actually put people together who have nothing in common, just their address, they bring in all their personal networks, all the different flavors, the different backgrounds, different ages, and so on, because they're interested in the environment. Hopper goes around from 25 years to 75 years, let's say. Yeah, the youth students we don't really reach, and the elderly above 80, 85, they're more serviced with the concierge. And then you unlock actually the bonding, the bridging, social capital with a heterogenic group. And a lot of assets come available. You maybe know about asset-based community development theory of Cormac Russell, for instance, who promotes it a lot. It's about knowledge, time, material, infrastructure that becomes available. That is the part that Hopper wants to do, activating the social capital. But then, of course, what do municipalities want? Municipalities want inclusive communities, representative communities, want participation of the community, volunteers. Yeah. But these things are not digital components. And that is what a lot of tools are mistaken. I mean, inclusion is not something digital. You cannot feel included digital. Inclusion is if you feel included in society, in your community, if you have a support network, if you have people to talk to, if you feel at ease. It's like the pyramid of Maslow that you need to go through. to discover also yourself and your identity, but within the world, within your environment. So that's a feeling. It's a feeling that people have or don't have. And it tends to be that less and less people have it these days. Yeah, because there is less sense of community, less sense of belonging in some countries. I'm not saying all countries, and I know the US is a very community-centric society and culture. But here, for instance, in Belgium, in Netherlands, the Nordics, people tend to very individualistic, right?
Wow.
If you
Well,
want to add to
I
that.
love this. I love this graphic because it really, it resonates with me is that, you know, there's only so much that a pure online community can do that we see there in the center. But I'm assuming the government and the actual concierge, which are the connections that are represented by the red arrows there, combining that with a robust online platform greatly expands the community. Is that sort of the concept?
Exactly. The magic happens offline. So we always say connect online to meet offline. We focus on offline engagement, like social activities, but also circular economy, exchanging goods, exchanging services, meet and greet with people in the neighborhood, helping each other. It's all offline, right?
Mhm.
Same with the participation. It's not a feeling or a digital component, but it's a behavior. You feel like helping your neighbor. You feel like going to a workshop of the city. You feel like volunteering. That's a behavior that you have or not have. But both this feeling of inclusion and this behavior of participation comes from the interest and the involvement in your community. Once you're involved, you will start to participate. You will start to take care. It's what communities do. Each community takes care of their members. It's just how we are wired as human beings. So you need to start nurturing it and stimulating it, because we lost a bit the way of doing that in the recent generations. Yeah.
Great.
So,
Okay, we got a few questions. And it looks like you've got lots of resources that you can share with us, but let's attack some of these, and then we can jump to various slides. Let's see. Sharon asked, is there a platform within Hoppler that serves visitors to an area for information they might find useful to improve their stay in the community? That's kind of interesting. So if I was visiting your neighborhood, is there an interaction for a visitor? Is this specifically for the folks that live there and are part of the government?
Today, not yet.
Okay.
But we are looking into this. Mostly with sharing information publicly, which is aggregated and anonymized, of course, about what is happening in the neighborhood, what people think of certain topics and so on, statistics and so on, but not yet. So you can actually subscribe as a visitor or tourist into a neighborhood, because we want to keep it trustful and enclosed, and you really need to subscribe based on your address and verify yourself with a code you received on mail or SMS. So not yet, but for instance, why I said it's getting more urgent, a lot of cities have to deal with expats and commuting and people who work there. So they also need to have a say in the community, in the policy making, because they spend maybe 1/3 of each day in that municipality. So the questions in Luxembourg, for instance, start to rise on this topic. Yeah.
Great. Let's see. Okay. Are the neighborhood helpers paid or volunteers? And I think that, so you had explained that the concierge, sometimes they're paid staff members, like a social worker in a government agency. However, one thing that you had mentioned is that if you can bring community together, a lot of times if you create a platform, the neighbors can help each other, which takes the workload off that social worker. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what the neighborhood platform, like I showed you, will do already out of the box. People will ask questions, they will share stuff, they give away stuff, and so on. But then, of course, we are talking about maybe more vulnerable citizens, people who are not on the network, people who need help, people who their questions are not yet solved. And for that, there is a question: are they paid or not? So it always starts with a citizen having a question for the concierge. Concierge can be outreaching, can be just physically present in a certain building, has a phone number, and so on. And the concierge will take in the request, because it's also a whole inventory of keeping all the requests manageable. So it's like a registration dashboard of requests of your citizens. So it's one central place for all the requests in the whole community or municipality, right? And then his neighborhood concierge, he knows people. He knows people out the top of his mind. He knows organizations, because it's totally not in competition with local active associations or organizations. They should evenly be serviced with what is already there. So there is a cascade, and that will answer the question from one of the people in the audience. First, we always try to look in the existing local support network or the social support network. We'll see, do we know someone who can solve this? That could be a volunteers list, that could be a colleague from the community center, that could be a neighbor, and so on. So that's the first thing. The second step is, we don't know, but we will look in the talent base of Hoppler to find someone with the skill that we need. For instance, someone wants to find transport. Okay, we'll look at all the drivers who want to drive their neighbors. Okay, you contact them. Let's say you don't find those people, then you will actually create a message or a communication message in the neighborhood, actually a call for people who want to help. So this can all be going automatically, all automatically, the notifications, the message posting, and so on. So the concierge can actually just put things on the ether, on air.
And the benefit, so like right now, if we used Nextdoor as an example, if you're not connected to that platform and you're not reading the platform, then it doesn't exist. Whereas this could actually be a member of the community that is not online, is not on Hoppler, that needs some help. The concierge is now using the platform because they have exhausted all of their resources, and now they're sort of like, hey, is there anybody in the community that could help out? And then the concierge is now sort of a screener, so to speak, in introducing that person to the individual that needs help. This is great. And I love the approach. And it's
and we mainly focus on volunteer work, of course, which is free of charge. But the last step of the cascade is, if we really don't find anyone after we exhausted our protocol, then we also can do paid tasks.
Paid providers, so connecting them. So, I mean, it could be, and I'm using this as an example outside of the aging, but it could be somebody needs to clean their gutters, somebody to clean their gutters, and connecting them with a paid provider. Okay. Lots of questions here. Let me keep on going through those. Deborah asks, what is involved with subscribing? I see there seems to be different pricing plans. So and again, for folks that may have tuned in later, this concept is being done in Europe, in Belgium and the Netherlands right now. And I'm just sort of sharing it with you, for those in the States, to give us some ideas on how we could better build community using technology and real people. But I know enough about this that it's free to anybody who lives within the boundaries of the neighborhood, but the government, you partner with the government, so they pay you to administer this?
Yeah, they pay to facilitate the platform, and that they choose which services they want to put on top, of course. If they already have a participation platform, they don't need to buy ours. If they already have a care platform, they don't need to buy ours. If they already have a neighborhood app, they actually can just use Nextdoor. It doesn't really matter for us. The pricing plans is only for municipalities.
Okay, got it. And then Barbara says, I've seen this model of neighbors helping neighbors in action, and it provides positive impacts on breaking social isolation and loneliness. How are you measuring the outcomes, and are you measuring the impacts of health? Yeah, have you done any research on your platform, and have there been any studies that have looked at its effectiveness?
Yeah, we do our own research, and we also work together with knowledge institutions like universities and so on, because we want to stay close to the latest theory and study on this matter, on social cohesion, on group dynamics, on aging in place, and so on. And what we actually do is the following. Of course, if you build communities and you work together with cities, you want to know if your interventions in this community have a positive impact. So at the moment, what we do is we have a survey going on every 6 months with questions about neighborhood feeling, trust, how much you would share, recommend, and so on. It's like something I can share if you want, on different social dimensions.
Yeah, if you've got a slide
social...
that shows that, I think that would be interesting.
Do I have a slide? Yes, maybe.
But if not, it's okay.
Well,
here we go.
Well, we do neighborhood analysis, but also with user input, completely anonymized and aggregated. I cannot state this enough because it's very important to us, and it's also obliged or obligated in Europe to not sell and share data. Actually, we cannot sell to governments if we would send our data to US and back again. So we need to do everything also in the continent. So like a lot of regulations. And we, of course, we ask people what they think about different topics in their neighborhood. We but also on personal feeling, sense of belonging. For instance, do you greet your neighbors if you walk in the street? These and that. And we create a whole impact on this, and actually also a whole white paper on this. It's yeah, you cannot see it probably. You can download it on our website. It's called The Neighborhood of the Future, and there we actually have the guts, let's say, to propose a formula to calculate the social capital per neighborhood and to see it progress over the years. So that's actually one of our, let's say, ambitions and vision, to start having a neighborhood score that can increase or decrease in time. And we do this on a yearly basis. But that is how we do it today. We're also looking in, of course, in ChatGPT, also a lot of ethical questions. So it's not yet in production or live. But ChatGPT or AI could also analyze a lot of the conversations on the network. Of course, if it's aggregated and anonymized, to give more insights in what people feel, think about their neighborhood, the concerns, and also how they use the platform. And we are experimenting with this, and it gives very, very, very interesting results.
Here, let me interrupt your share. I'm on your website right now, and where do we get the white paper on the neighborhood of the future?
Well, if you scroll a bit down, you will see the challenges we tackle here. Yes, and beneath that there is a call to action.
Okay.
White paper.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me share that with everybody.
Sure.
And right there we go. Great. Okay, let's get back to some of these questions and talking a little bit more about this. It says, Alice says, I have friends outside my local neighborhood and sometimes outside of my state. What do people think that is? So, Alice, I would say to you, this topic and this platform is focused on tighter geographic areas where it's very easy for us to help each other as we're neighbors. And I actually think the fact that many of us have friends that are afar, it's much more difficult for them to lend us support, actually face-to-face support. And that's where a platform like this is great when our friends and family are spread all over the world, or even 30 minutes away. It's a lot more difficult for an adult child to give mom a ride to the drugstore if he lives 30 minutes away than it is somebody who lives next door that happens to be going to the drugstore and can take mom along with them. Would you agree, Yannick?
Absolutely. I mean, Hoppler is not there to recreate your own personal network again, which you already have on different apps and of course different networks. It's actually to create more tight connections with people living close by and the local stakeholders like the municipality or local organizations, which you don't know maybe, or not all of them, let's say. Yeah, that's the whole purpose.
And Martha says, how well is Hoppler doing financially? It seems marvelous. I love the confidentiality. I think I really do like your focus on confidentiality and the lack of and being ad free. But is this sustainable? Are we going to be worried that you might be going out of business in the future?
Well, I'm going to be completely honest because I'm an open book in that area. It's hard to build something like this because traditional networks, of course, sell data. Data is the gold of this age or this time. So we made a lot of difficult choices. So we make it difficult for us because not because there is no interest or if it's not profitable, but yeah, our segment or clients are municipalities, which have a sales cycle that take very long. It sometimes takes up to 1 year, 1 year and a half to have an agreement to start the implementation, to make it billable, let's say, to be invoiceable. So the first 4 years, 4 or 5 years, we were dependent on investors. We have 3 investors, it's strategic Belgian companies, not VCs, not financial investors who want a return, but more like investors who, they're all on our website, by the way, in the About page. They are strategically having their own products and business, but they want to do is for PR and marketing and because they believe in the societal impact of the project. But now we are actually, after 7 years, last year we are the first time profitable, and that's because we're operating in Belgium now, so also in the Flemish and the Dutch and the French part, then also in Netherlands. We have 50% of the country of Luxembourg, which is a very small country. We have our first project in Turkey. We are on speaking terms with Switzerland, Spain, the Nordics, even with some cities in Canada. We had discussions going on. So it's interesting to see how it will evolve. But it's a hard path that we chose.
Well, I mean, the hard paths are always the tough ones, but I think making the decision to have a real person connection with a platform, and some of the decisions that you're making are ultimately what are going to make this more beneficial to the end consumer. And I think the first time we chatted, that Nextdoor, the platform Nextdoor that us Americans are familiar with, did they try to go to Europe, or have they been to Europe, and how has that been received?
Well, I even have already been connected with a few people of Nextdoor, of course, because they actually have a conquering mentality. So they just buy platforms in different countries. So they bought Street Life in UK, they bought Nabu in Australia. They landed then in Europe for the first time in Netherlands, which is our northern neighbor. And yeah, we feel, of course, a presence. I'm not gonna lie. So they have also a very intuitive, good platform. I mean, all social networks, the big social networks, are American produced, and so they're very good platforms. It's actually hard for us to keep up with those standards. Let's say we are a European builder with Hoppler. It's not easy to keep up with Instagram and Snapchat and so on. But they never put a foot in Belgium yet. And also we saw them lose from a local player in Germany. So it's not so easy for them either to come to Europe, actually.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't see anywhere in their model in the US to have a relationships and concierges as your platform does.
No. They build an advertisement platform for retailers and for regional players to sell data and eyeballs. And yeah.
And Peru is she asks, how open is Hoppler to offer services in the US and the rest of the world? And I mean, I understand that growing a business, you need to start where you're at, but have you had opportunities, or what would it take to sort of test market this in a place outside of your current regions?
That's a good question. We never really had focus on US yet. We think it's a very closed and difficult market first. That's how we feel it. It could be totally different, of course, but of course it's another time zone. It's we don't have people boots on the ground here and so on. So it doesn't not make it easy. But on the other hand, we are a software company. So software is easy implemented on the other side of the world. We see that now in Turkey. So I think we're more prepared this year, last year, than let's say 5 years ago. Then we would not think it's doable, actually. But now we believe that it's possible. Yeah.
Well, I'll make sure to have your contact info on the recording link, so that if somebody is interested in reaching out. Elvis says, the people who say they're available for babysitting, picking up medications, etc., are those people advertising a service which they expect to be paid for, or are they volunteers? How does that work? Yeah, a great example would be a babysitter, I think, which could also be somebody that's willing to take care of an elder. If are they all volunteers, or is it a mix of paid and unpaid?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually, because the neighborhood app itself, Hoppler, where we as a person can just ask questions and offer our help, it's just a facilitation. So there is no payment system built in. There is no law regulation built in. So it's what people they discuss. It's just facilitating communication. And if people meet up in real life and they do babysitting tasks, and someone gives €10 or $10 in this case, then it's out of our site. But the concierge is a whole different story. Once you help vulnerable people, the concierge, of course, needs to screen the people from the neighborhood app or from the local support network. Needs to screen. And of course, we ask at the vulnerable citizen, do you want this help for free? Do you want to pay for it? And so on. And there is also already a lot of regulated businesses, like transport businesses and so on, who have a fixed tarification, which cannot be tampered with or misled. People could be misled and so on. So there is this person makes sure that the vulnerable person can trust what is offered to him or her. And that is very important, because we are old and wise enough to take a bit care of ourselves. And of course, even then, sometimes people take advantage or misadvantage or abuse from the system. But you cannot afford this with vulnerable citizens.
Now, Deborah brings up a comment that I've heard on a regular basis and experienced it firsthand. And she says, Nextdoor seems to feel more hostile and gossipy than community building, although it does some community building. And I tend to agree is that when I go on Nextdoor in my neighborhood, from time to time, I see somebody who legitimately needs help or somebody who's really trying to help somebody else. But for the most part, whenever I'm talking to my neighbors, they're like, oh, everybody's always on there complaining. Do you find the same sort of complaint gossip type dialogue occurring on your platform? And does the concierge help remediate some of that?
Yeah, well, beside the concierge, if the municipality has a concierge or not, we also have community managers managing the communities. So we have a whole deontologic code, how we do community management. So we are doing actively for our clients. This means that people cannot be always negative or frustrated or assaulting other people, being aggressive, calling racism names and so on. So that will be controlled by our community manager, by an anonymous reporting mechanism and an automatic reporting mechanism, based on blacklisted words. Okay. And then we will actually sensibilize this person. Let's say, like, yeah, we saw you doing this. This is not following our 5 house rules. We have 5 house rules too. And then we give a warning or a temporary ban or a permanent ban. Depends on what is the abuse, of course. So we do that proactively. But at the same time, also within the onboarding, we already say it's not like Facebook. It's not here to just vent your frustration. It's here to co-create, to be positive. And that excludes some people also. That is true. That's the people who are not interested in the neighborhood or maybe frustrated. So they, of course, have other platforms to vent. But if you follow the 5 house rules and the community is not complaining, we actually have not a lot of reports, maybe let's say 30 per day. And what is 30 per day? We have more than 1 million users actively per day.
Oh, wow.
In 250 municipalities. So that's almost nothing. After 2 hours, we've done all the community management that needs to be done for that day. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, and Deborah follows up. She says, I think the goal of Hoppler, having the goal of building real community, makes the difference. And I really agree. I mean, you have illustrated that in your founding principles, and how you're approaching this is radically different than other community building networks. So that's.
And I also believe how you're less anonymous on such a platform once you subscribe, because you're there with your name and your street with your neighbors. But that's something you will not dare to say what you would say in front of your friends on Facebook. Because you will meet those people at the school gate or in the bakery, and they will think, this guy is crazy. But that's one thing. Another thing is that the virality of the platform is also gone. There is only your message is not shared with the city or with neighborhoods outside of your neighborhood. Let's say there's only your own neighborhood, which is only max a few hundred, sometimes 1,000 people. Mm-hmm. But it cannot go viral, so people don't start to abuse it in commercial way or political way or whatever. It's also not allowed, being commercial and political. It's not allowed.
Man, I'm looking at the clock, and we've already burned through an hour. I've got 2 more questions that I'll throw out, and then this has been I really
Then
appreciate.
then we book another hour, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm hoping that maybe one of our municipalities jumps on this, but Barbara says it seems that our senior villages would be a great test market in the US. The physical model of neighbors helping neighbors is in place. Most have their own websites and paid coordinators. I agree. I think that if I was to think of a way that this could be implemented in the US, it might be through this age in place village. And I'm happy to connect you, Yannick, to that organization, and
Always
maybe
happy to talk.
there could be something there. And then Elizabeth has a good question. You talk about vulnerable individuals. How is it determined that someone is vulnerable? And perhaps this is a little bit of US and European dialect in terms of defining what somebody who is vulnerable is.
Well, let's say there's not that we propose a definition who is vulnerable or not vulnerable. It's just to talk about the concept who are people who could use some help around the house. Because there could be a physical disability, a psychological, a social, a financial issue. I don't know the whole spectrum of when to call someone vulnerable or not. But what we mean by that is actually the concierge is the person who will be contacted when someone needs help. And we were actually already from the beginning, when we start this concept, very mindful about not stigmatizing people. You know, that is very important, because people don't want to feel vulnerable. They don't want to call for help always again and again and again, the same person. So there is like the shyness of asking for something. Yeah, we call it vraagverlegenheid. It's very yeah, a lot of it's a very common issue that people don't dare to ask.
Okay.
Yeah, because they don't want to put themselves in a position. So that's why we didn't call it social or helper or something, but we called it concierge. Concierge, you know, probably from buildings.
Yep.
Above, where people could ask them to fix something. And what we see is that the neighborhood concierge has this role of being the man who connects and knows how to fix things and your issues and so on. So it could always be that if someone asks, who is a bit older, to change a light bulb or to replace a light bulb because they cannot ascend stairs and so on, it's actually a question for company. So we see that there is always an underlying question of people feeling lonely. So they make up some task to be done, going to the groceries, gardening, where home care cannot fix the job, or it's too expensive to fix the job. So that's why we wanted to make it as less stigmatized itself. But all the people who call the concierge and we book into the system, we of course ask if we can ask for their phone number and email address to contact them to supply the help. We call clients of the concierge, but in this case, to make it clear, I say vulnerable people
Okay.
who are in need of some help.
And Elizabeth gave she was wondering, how do you find them in the community? Is it just organically because of the platform and the word is out that there's this supportive platform in the neighborhood?
Yeah. So okay, that makes it a bit a different question. So first of all, people know people. So that's one way. So you have, of course, 30% being engaged in a neighborhood. They know maybe a neighbor who could use help, this and this and that. So they sign, they detect. We've seen detectations that could save lives because the blinders were not up for 2 days. People go ring, they see, and then there was a person in need, and they could ring the emergencies right in time, right? So that's one thing. Of course, you have also the outreaching aspect. On warm days, you go ring to all the elder citizens, see if they have enough water, if they are hydrated enough, and so on. So you can also detect. We had concierges going into a house, seeing that it was full of cockroaches, for instance. That is alarming. That is a signal that you can actually need to intervene. So you can do this in different ways. And of course, you can promote the phone number. If you need help, you can call the concierge to fix something and so on. But the concierge is actually an ambassador, a connector into the neighborhood. It connects, you know, maybe one slide. If you allow me, one slide.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
You know the pyramid of Maslow, right?
Yep.
From your primal instinct needs until the self-development. Well, some Dutch, wait, one slide. Some Dutch scientists created a pyramid of Maslow on community and neighborhood development. And, you know, before people will go out of themselves, and so they're introvert, they turn to themselves because they're not self-reliant, or they have an issue, or they're financially have a problem. So they have bigger concerns to worry about than subscribing on a neighborhood network and helping other ones. You first need to fix that. And that is where the neighborhood concierge comes into place, to fix people, their basic needs, to go out of the front door. Because if they're locked and closed behind the front door and you cannot reach them, you cannot see them, it's a big issue. Once you have your basic issues, problems fulfilled, you start, or you can start opening up, getting some connections in the neighborhood, going on a walk, meeting, visiting someone, have a talk on a bench. That's the informal connections, right? And these informal connections give back this involvement and interest, as we showed in that other schematic, the one from Hobler. And then people start to get ready for formal participation. That's the participation coming top down from organizations, from the municipality, involving people in volunteer work, in participation projects, in renovation projects, and so on, being representative in the school board, whatever. It's the activation of people in the community. And once you're active in the community, you have the bonding, the social cohesion, you have the sense of belonging in your community. So you need to make sure you don't skip steps and expect all people to be representative in formal participation. Yeah, that's why a lot of people are excluded, because they're not there yet. They're just not in that stage yet. Voila, that's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, hey, Leslie says more shows from overseas, please. This is exceptional. I'm glad you liked it, because we can learn so much by learning about other cultures. And this has been exceptional, Yannick. And we love what you're doing. You got a big fan club over here, and we'll do our best to get you going over here. But I think you've inspired a lot of us to think differently about how we connect and build community and use technology as a tool to get people. I loved what you just said there. We got to get people outside their doors. If they're hidden inside and isolated, we can't understand what their needs are and make connections to help them.
Absolutely.
All right, folks, this has been fantastic. And I'll get the recording up there shortly, and Yannick will be in touch and would love to have you back on again.
Thank you for the invite. Thank you all for listening, for asking questions, for giving me a time to present my life work, let's say, and my passion. So yeah, thank you all.